And about 3 years ago, I built well, the two flat cars have two different styles of trucks, slightly different, only just a little bit. One's more ornate than the other. And about 3 years ago, I built a set of Pro 48 trucks, 3D printed set of Pro 48 trucks of the less ornate one. And I couldn't figure out quite how to do the more ornate one. So I kind of set it aside. Friday, I got bored. Been sitting at home too long, I guess. And this last Friday, I got bored and decided to work on it. And I'd been putting it off because I thought it was going to be really hard. And it took me about 2 hours to make the change to do the more ornate truck. Then Sunday, I got ambitious. I went down to my basement and I pulled this out. This is a flat car kit from BTS, Bill Wade. Nice wooden kit.
Nice job.
Well, it looks pretty decent.
Yeah.
But I decided to see if I could model that in 3D and 3D print it. And it went faster than I expected. This is version 1, which I printed on Monday after starting on Sunday.
Nice.
Very good.
Yeah.
It had a lot of small details wrong with it. So now I'm up to version 4, which I had hoped would be the final version. But here's version 4.
Oh, wow. Look at
It's
that.
got the new trucks on it, by the way, although they haven't been painted yet. Now, this has not been painted. This is still in shiny plastic. I was hoping this would be the final version, but I got down to my basement again this afternoon, and one of the things I brought up was some monofilament line that I was going to use for the truss rods. And I discovered that one of the holes I had made for stringing the truss rods through was too small. Actually, it should have been big enough, but sometimes things don't come out exactly the way you design them when you actually print them. So there will be a version 5 tomorrow.
Why don't you just drill it out with a?
Well, basically it's impossible. It is inside the frame here, and there's no way you can get to it with a drill.
Oh.
You know, I can't get there. Besides which, I need to fix the model anyway, because if I want to print more than one, I made one mistake today. I installed the coupler. When I designed these, I designed in a coupler pocket that's custom made for the coupler I'm using, which is an Ed Alexander HO coupler. Walthers used to sell it. They don't have it anymore. I think I've got enough to last though. But I made the pocket so that the coupler is a press fit in there, and there's a set pair of ears on the coupler, and there's a notch for them. So once you've got that thing in there, it's not going to come out very easily. And unfortunately, I put it on there before A, I painted it, and B, I found out that this is not going to be the final version. So I'm going to have to break this one up and pull those couplers out because they are glued in, unfortunately.
Right, right. Nice work, Paul.
Yeah.
Question.
Yeah.
Paul, what printer are you using, and what software are you using?
Okay. The software I'm using for design is a thing called OpenSCAD. It's very unusual in that instead of drawing the model, you actually write code to to create it, and then you run that through a visualizer, and it makes the geometry, which you then send to the printer. The printer that these are coming off of is a Prusa Mark 2.5S. So it's a pretty decent printer. Comes from Czechoslovakia. I've recently purchased a resin printer, and I've not gotten into that far enough yet. I could probably do this flat car in it, but I don't think I could fit the box car into the limited volume that it has. So,
Wow.
but I've been messing with designing an engine and 3D printing that, and kind of set it on the shelf a few months ago when I ran into some problems. But I'm probably going to get that back out. I just haven't figured out how the heck I'm going to power it yet.
Got it.
Wow.
Good work, Paul. That's cool
I
stuff.
should mention that Paul is also our liaison with the NMRA. So you'll get a message from him periodically.
Right.
Quarterly.
Quarterly.
Yeah,
Quarterly.
I suggested at one of the conventions that we become a special interest group of the NMRA, and for my sins, I got to do all the work.
Ah,
You just weren't quick enough in taking that one step back.
Yeah.
Got it. Thanks, Paul. Let's see. Chip, anything new?
yeah, a little bit. I've got the fire in my belly, and I've downloaded the software AnyRail, so I can start doing some detailed layout concepts. I've also gotten into my studio, which has fallen into disarray, and now I've got that all organized so I can start actually building some kits again, which I sorely miss. And I found a document that I got many years ago from the National Park Service up in, where John Brown attacked. I can't think of the name.
Harper's Ferry.
Hmm?
Harper's Ferry.
Harper's Ferry. Yeah, I was asking about the paint color for what they paint their artillery caissons. And I got a reply back of, what the original paint mixture was, according to the specifications. But I also ended up getting a Sherman-Williams paint code. Don't know if anybody is interested in what that would be. I can post it to the group. I mean, if somebody wanted to paint, some modules or to actually get some color, but it is what they're using for painting many of their gun carriages.
Yeah, that'd be great. Post that, please do.
Yes.
Okay.
And what color is that?
The ambiguous green, but it's a darker shade of green that we normally would have. I'm actually thinking of just going down to the store and asking for a gallon of it. I'm kind of strange that way. I've got a number from when I was reenacting. I've got a number of bare poles that I used to use for my 6-foot wedge tent and fly, and I was thinking that I don't really see myself reenacting too much because of my infirmities, but I was thinking that what I could do is paint those up and then sell that off to some local reenactors, and it would look a lot better than just plain wood.
Yeah.
So give me an idea of green. So, but anyways, yeah, I'll post that tomorrow. But like I said, it's amazing. as I'm starting to dig myself back out, what I'm finding, all sorts of sketches and notes and scribbles is what I call it. I have lots of notes and scribbles.
Good.
But
Good.
it's interesting though, because, I finally decided that it's, what type of a rail layout that I would like to mimic. And I look at all my notes, and I've always been fascinated with City Point. And matter of fact, I've done a lot of CAD work and layout stuff for some of the different intersections that were part of the City Point rail line, particularly going out to the far western branches of the federal line. So,
Cool.
anyways, that's kind of what I've been working on. Like I said, I got the fire in my belly now, and
Great.
I'm just pushing ahead.
Thanks, Chip. DC?
Welcome. Yeah.
DC, okay. Well, I was kind of inspired by John Bopp had shared can you see that?
Oh,
John,
Yeah.
you still there?
Oh, yeah.
Where he did I was working on, this is actually a converted Lincoln funeral car.
Mm-hmm.
What I've done is, of course, I've used the bottoms from a different poacher car, AHM car. Those are the trucks. I kind of drilled them out and filled them up and stuff. Those are the trucks from the Lincoln funeral car.
gee.
Daylighted the steps, and then I rebuilt all the ends, and so the chain is free moving. So this is the original Lincoln funeral car, and then this one. Are you going to do this one? Good. Here we go. This one is a regular poacher car.
Mm-hmm.
The bottom and the ends are all the same. This roof was is a 3D print from Panamint Models over there at Shapeways. He doesn't offer them to the public yet because he's afraid because of the cost, but we were kind of putzing around with it. So one of the interesting things about the Poacher AHM cars I discovered, it may not be new news to anybody else, but when I was working on these a few months ago, is that some of them have air brakes and some of them don't. The fortunate thing is that they're cheap on eBay, so that if I got some with the air brakes and some without, I just used the ones without. Then
Yeah,
this car,
They are cheap.
sorry?
I was just going to say they are cheap because I was at the local hobby shop today and I picked up one for $8.
Okay.
Yeah,
Now
I mean, yeah, they're very plentiful.
Okay. This one is actually a Bachmann car.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the roof is also a 3D print from Panamint Models. The bottoms, all the bottoms are basically the same. I did them on all 4 cars. You'll notice the stacks are different.
Yeah.
The stacks are different.
Mm-hmm.
The vents also are a little different. They're actually difference in the number of windows and everything. And then the final car, I'm not sure whose car this started with. It was, when I got to it, it was just an empty shell in one of my boxes. But I took it, this is one of those duck-billed roofs.
Mm-hmm.
I took a file and sandpaper and sandpaper and file and sandpaper and did all the detail off, and I cut it and I rebuilt the ends.
Yep.
But
Wow.
well, those are kind of like, John, what you were working on, and good minds think alike is what I wanted to say.
Well, yours look very good. That baggage car is also from AHM.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, it came with a sort of a duckbill roof.
Yeah, it is. They have all this roof detail on it that, of course, overskilled, and I just sanded it off, filed it off, and then sanded it off to get a smooth roof.
DC?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what you got to do. And there, over the last few months, there's been somebody on eBay selling cars somewhat along this line,
Mm-hmm.
where he's taken some existing roof and sort of whittled away at it to get uh, something like a monitor roof. I haven't
His
looked for
roofs,
them lately.
yeah,
For a
his
while,
roofs,
he was putting them up there every couple of weeks. I'm sorry?
his roofs are like this one, like
Mhm.
on the Lincoln funeral cars. Because it's got the flat solid bottom.
Yeah.
These have the arch, and it's actually, I don't have a photo of it, but they're detailed underneath the roof. So I
Nice.
love the
So
3D
how
print.
does one get one of those roofs from Panamint?
You could very nicely go to the Shapeways site and contact Eric Cox. Eric's also a group member.
Eric's, right.
Eric Cox, yeah.
And you can send him an email through Shapeways, and he can probably, ask him what he's charging now. But they worked real nice. I still owe him some photos of it.
Beautiful.
Yeah, they're nice looking.
Thank you. So that's kind of what some of my last modeling.
Nice, DC. Thank you, baby.
Thank you.
Joel, for you, what's happening?
I'm sort of sitting right here enjoying the pandemic in Houston, where they're starting to shut everything back down again. For those of you who really want to look, Eric also makes the 1856 Pennsylvania car modernized with the roof, or you can do it without the modern roof. Those cars are in a couple of Russell's shots of the wreck train. I have been doing a lot of research on the U.S. military railroad's wrecking train that was located in Alexandria and was also duplicated. One of the things I found kind of interesting in that was the number of cabooses. And by the way, if you check the U.S. military railroad records, they called them cabooses in the 1863 car reports, which are over at the National Archives. So the word caboose was at least in use there. I've heard for years that it wasn't. What happened was nobody looked at that box. But that car was also used as a telegraph car. It is used as a kitchen car and a camp car. And if you look at the photographs of the wreck train at Manassas, you'll notice there's probably about 11 of those cars set up, and their roof configurations all show different numbers of smokestacks and those things. They do not have the signal lantern brackets on the end. So I decided that they must have used that particular car design for a lot more than just a conductor's car for the train, and it picked up a lot of modifications.
Excuse me. Which car are you talking about?
The standard caboose. Let's see. For some reason or other, I don't have one behind me right now.
Well, it was basically
it
a boxcar converted, right?
No, it is. It was actually purpose built.
But
It
did
used
it have a cupola?
Uses the dimensions of a boxcar.
Yeah,
but
I
it's
have one.
different appurtenances.
But there was no cupolas on these cars.
Well, no, the cupola comes a little bit later.
Yeah, no, I realize that. Well, that's really what I wanted to know. When you didn't specify that, I thought, well,
No, they were not using that's the car, correct?
Yeah, well, we went from DC to you so quickly. I thought you were talking about DC's cars, and I was like, what?
No, as far as I found in evidence, the only cars with the what we would call a cupola were the monitor roof passenger cars,
right,
which were starting to come into use in the mid 1860s, and are identified on many railroads. Unfortunately, a lot of those are in fact prints, and some of those are in fact probably advertising prints. So you really don't know whether they had the car or they were just saying this is the latest.
Well, no, because Jackson and Sharp send out a lot of pictures, and so did one other company, and I can't think of it, but you can see a lot of these pictures on John White's books, his passenger books.
Cool.
He's very good.
So that's it. And if anybody is interested, I'll throw my nickel in. I would like to do a presentation on my particular layout, of course, is Alexandria. And one of the areas I'm in the middle of designing is the Hay docks, Hay Wharf area, because it's very well photo documented and also shows up in the quartermaster map of Alexandria, which gives you the dimensions of the building. So I can easily probably put a presentation together over that piece of research.
Cool. Thank you, Joel. I'll be in touch with you around that to schedule that.
Okay.
Thank you.
That'd be
Bernie.
great.
Yeah.
Mr. Kopensky, what's new with you? Mute. You be mute. Oh, there you go.
I'm here. I'm awake, sort of. Oh, there's my new thing.
Your flag?
It's a cotton flag. Where? How do I do that? Oh, here we go. There it is.
Yeah.
So you guys gave me a hard time about having a nylon flag.
Oh, right.
So I said, what the heck, I'll get a cotton one. Let's see, hold on. Can you see the stars?
Yeah.
See how it has the nice circular pattern?
It's a period flag.
34.
Wow.
Wow.
Very nice.
So it was a beautiful embroidered flag, cotton with all sewn together. Came in a little package, big letters this big, made in China.
Ah.
Shouldn't it be 35?
So anyway, the Chinese make nice flags.
Right.
So West Virginia will join the union in like 2 months from the time that I'm modeling. So we only have 34 flags, which is
I
what it
love
was
that
for us.
authenticity, baby.
Yeah. So the little cheap nylon flag.
August of '63.
Right.
I was
Right.
thinking I'll fly this one. I got to get a flagpole for outside,
There you go.
and
That's
that
nice.
way, if it gets damaged. Actually, when they worked on the basement, you see the paint stain?
Paint or blood?
It's paint.
Oh,
The guys, or maybe it's might be grout from the tile. So anyway, well, last week I worked on a building for a client. So it was a mill building, probably from the turn of the century, 1900s, and then it got covered in sheet metal. So some people said, hey, use it as a background structure on a Civil War layout, but it's HO scale.
oh,
And
too bad.
you can see pictures on my blog. I already mailed it to the fellow.
Oh,
So yeah, I don't need,
Good.
now I'm just trying to talk my wife into putting on a 4-season room on the back of the house
oh no.
with a dugout basement.
Sounds good.
That would give me another 10 by 20.
You need any signatures to help you with that?
She's not buying it so far. She's like, you only want it because you want more layout. I said, so?
See, that's the key, man. If you can just figure out what it is that will satisfy her in that deal, you're golden.
It's a win-win, Bernie. Win-win.
The real problem is I think we're at the limit that the city will allow for square foot of house on a particular lot.
Oh, wow.
So, we're pretty tight where I live.
Right.
So
How friendly
anyway,
are you with the neighbors?
Well, I don't know if I ever told you that story, but my neighbor on this side, she's an English lady and she has grandkids. So they came to look at the layout one day and they were over by Aquia Landing and she said, see, how exactly did she say it? She said something like, what are you going to do about this? I said, well, I've run out of room. So if I wanted to expand, I need to tunnel into your basement and go into there. She goes, oh my, that would be a wonderful idea.
Oh, yeah.
She's from England,
Right. That's great.
So
Okay.
she's a little bit on the clueless side. I was cooking chili a couple weeks ago, and she knocks on the door, and she says, "Is Bernie painting toxic chemicals in the basement?" And Alicia says, no, that's just as chilly.
Wow. That's great. Oh, cool. Thanks,
But
Bernie.
no more Civil War layout. I'm going to Alabama on Friday or Saturday. I got to help my daughter. And then when we come back, I'll start expanding into the other room.
Cool. Good. We'll look forward to getting down there one of these days. Thanks, man.
Well, he's coming supposedly in September, right?
Right. Still is for now. I'll keep you posted. Don, what's happening with you, Mr. Ball?
Well, not really
Mr.
a
Ball.
whole lot since
I was talking to Don. John, you're next.
no.
Sorry.
No, not a lot. I got the town I've been working on my layout done. I've been working on it for a couple of months and finally got it all scenic and structures in place and happy with myself. That's about it.
That's the way
it.
you do it.
That's good. Happy with yourself.
Can I tell Don something?
Yeah.
Don, I'm engaged in a play-by-email using Vassal.
Aha.
But we have 26 players.
My God, what are you playing?
We're playing Long Roads to Gettysburg, and it's total double blind. And I am second corps, so I'm Hancock.
Oh my God.
And Slocum screwed up and got hammered by all of Ewell's corps, and I tried to rescue him, and the commander said, abandon him, come back here. So he's on his own. That's what's going to happen this weekend.
Oh boy.
That sounds
Poor
like
Slocum.
I'll follow up with you on that. I want to know more about that.
I did a little blog post. You can see the map and such. It's really, really cool.
Neat.
Oh yeah.
Oh, it's with 26 players and doing it double blind. And plus I also play hopped. I occasionally will send a message to the commander complaining about the railroads.
Of course. That's
I've been
great.
working on,
Thanks, Bernie.
Oh,
Don?
go ahead. I'm just going to tell them I've been working on developing a module for Shenandoah Valley campaign.
Oh, a
Yeah.
railroad module or a battlefield module?
No, it's a battlefield module to work with Vassal and
Oh, cool.
18 different scenarios, a lot of hidden movement and so on.
Nice.
So anyway,
Good. Thank you. Mr. Taylor, what's happening in Memphis?
Not a lot since our last meeting. It's fun to see Rhett Tyler. Rhett, I got at least one of your albums. Was it Live at Manny's Car Wash? Is that it?
Yeah.
Oh man, I listen to it nightly.
Thank you.
How did you and Brian Kammerer link up?
Through Tom.
Is that right?
I think Brian was here when you came and visited that time, right, Rhett?
Yep.
Yeah, is that right, DC? Yep. Yeah, Brian, yeah, was
The very
DC?
first time he was there?
Yeah, yep.
Okay.
Brian's actually on here. He's on mute. He could probably tell us exactly when that all happened. You there,
Yeah.
Brian?
I don't see
Yeah, I'm
him.
here. I'm here.
Where?
He doesn't have a video. He's just on audio.
There's no video? Wait, I'll get video. There we go. There.
There he is.
there's Brian.
All right.
So you met.
I thought we met at the cow barn. No, after the cow barn meeting,
Oh, Timonium.
Timonium.
No,
You had scheduled.
Brett wasn't
something-
at Timonium.
No, I wasn't.
No, I know. But you
Brett
guys-
was at Tom's
That-
house.
Right.
Right. He was at Tom's house, and that's how we met.
Yeah.
So
That's it.
Yeah, that was.
it was a great union. So
And it continues. So yeah, Charlie, was that it?
Well, let me say this. Has everybody seen TOGLC?
Mm-hmm.
No.
Has anybody not seen it?
You have not seen it?
Jimmy
Oh,
Jones.
gosh. You should sign out of this group meeting right now and watch that instead.
I got a copy, Jimmy. I'll send it off to you.
It's the greatest.
I agree with you.
Wow.
It's a very complex movie.
It's fabulous.
Got a lot of moving parts.
Well, I'll say. So Charlie, anything
Well,
you're working on?
I'm working on several smaller buildings and trying to build up courage to do the machine shop at Huntsville
Oh,
at some point. But
got it. Good. Thank you, buddy. Ron? Oh, you know what? Hold on a second. Let's just go to Brian since we got him in there in this conversation. So what are you up to these days, mate?
Well, with the tearing down of all the Southern soldiers, the monuments, I've kind of put Gettysburg on the back burner.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
I am still working on it, occasionally. It's just that, my life has been busy this summer with trimming all the trees and the bushes up here. And then my daughter had a baby, and I'm doing some jobs for her at some client up in Westport. So, so I'm being pulled in 20 different directions. But I'm also the manager of the Rowayton Farmers Market every Friday here. So that keeps me busy too.
Got it. Right.
That
Right.
must be kind of fun.
The farmers market is great. I rebuilt it from a devastating thing 2 years ago when I inherited it. And I'm back up to, I think, 18 vendors again, which is great, So it brings in some nice added income.
That's
And I'm a very, very lenient manager. I don't collect application fees, and I don't collect any sliding percentage of their sales. So, I figure the vendors need to make as much money as possible. I just need to get more vendors to make my money. You know what I mean?
Right.
So,
Well, when you keep playing it with that kind of integrity, I'm sure it'll draw some more.
oh no, they love me. They
Yeah.
actually adore me.
Yeah.
So.
Cool. Good, man. Good seeing you. Ron, what's happening?
I just retrieved from the engineer today the full scale size prints of the plans that I shared with you the last time we were together.
Whoa.
And
Yeah.
let me see if I can I share this? Yeah, let me share this. Can you guys see that?
Wow.
Wow.
Whoa.
So that's half of it. And it's not been,
wow.
you can see there's still borders around it, so I have to trim it to size so I can put them together. But yeah, that's half the basement. Then there's another to the left that goes all the way up over on the left side. So that was the big thing today. The engineer, the printing place that they print engineer plans, called me up and said, it's ready.
Wow. Is that the Martinsburg Roundhouse?
Yeah, that's the Martinsburg Roundhouse.
Awesome.
And then that's heading west out of town. And then to the left would be heading east out of town.
And the whole size of your layout is what again?
That's about 30 feet.
Holy smokes.
About 29 some inches. So yeah, there's a whole nother half sticking out the other side. My wife walked down in the basement and I laid it all out. I just got back from the print shop. So those are 36 sheets that are 36 inches by 60 inches. And so then I have to trim off, I still have to trim some things off of them, and I'll put I think I'm going to put them in, I think I figured out there'd be like, I'll put them into 5, because at some point in time, once I build the bench work, then I want to be able to lift them up and set them down on top of the bench work. So then you can kind of lay out. And if you can, I don't know if you can see it in this. I also, yeah, barely in one of the screens, you can see numbers that I've put on, 42s in the screen. Those are actually elevations that come from the original. So I can kind of figure out what the elevations are at each of the locations. So this was the big thing today. I rushed over as soon as he called me and said they're done.
That's great.
So there are 36 of them. So
wow.
Yeah, so that's kind of, that keeps pushing along. But one of the things I did with the Sanborn maps that I had originally spread out all over the basement was I went through and cut out all the structures. So I still have those structures so I can see what the footprints will be of each of the structures. And supposedly as soon as my son has his first child, I'll be heading down to Virginia with a side stop into Martinsburg to take more pictures. So that's what I'm hoping. I said when he wants me to come down and build a fence and see my granddaughter when she arrives. So
That's cool.
I think I'll take a little detour into West Virginia on the way and head into Martinsburg and take some more photos and stuff like that. So that's good. That's what I've been up to, and that's where we're kind of heading with things.
Thank you, Ron. How about you, Mr. Borkman?
Oh, well, you all have inspired me. And so this past week, I decided to redo my layout and make more of a Civil War era scenery and so on. And one thing led to another, and I basically tore the whole railroad out.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah, it happens. Death of one, rebirth of another. It's going to be very good. So thank you all for the inspiration. Since John Ott was here, I went back and dug out an old locomotive that I built so I can show it to John here. This is back when I'm an O-scaler, but this was back when I was an HO. So let me see if I can hold this thing up here. It's a little switcher that I needed.
You built that?
I built that, yeah. So I built that out of sheet brass on a mechanism that was an old Japanese import back from the 1970s somewhere.
Can you hold it a little further away from the screen?
The back?
Yeah, that's better.
That's good.
Is that better?
Yes.
Wow.
Okay, I can put
Nice.
it any old way you want. Those of you all who've done locomotive rebuilds, there's actually a general part in there. Can you find it?
Oh, the stack?
Yep, the stack. Stack came out of an old Mantua general. Way to go. That says the man who has how many generals on your layout?
Not as many as some other people on this call.
So, yeah, okay. So this is just one that I had done. I'm now out of HO, so it sits on a shelf basically.
Wow.
I've got another project going of a Baldwin 080 flexible beam truck locomotive. We'll see how that goes. It's been put on the back burner since I've got to get my layout rebuilt now so I can run something.
Got it. Wow, nice, David. Thanks for sharing that. That was cool. And Mr. Bopp.
Well, first of all, I'd like to get back to those monitor roof passenger cars. The Pennsylvania version of that car, is that something that Eric Cox has in HO as well?
Eric's cars are N scale.
Yeah, well, I mean, he has some stuff in HO and some in N. And since we were talking about that, I got out another device and looked on his site and I only found it in N scale, so maybe I misunderstood about that Pennsylvania car.
Sometimes, well, I'm an N scaler, but that is why communication with Eric is important, because he has rescaled some of his N scale stuff before. I think DC asked him for the B&O coal cars, and it does not hurt to ask.
Right, right.
Eric is sometimes very accommodating.
Ask him about the roofs.
Well, yeah, definitely going to do that. Be nice to have a little variety in those type of cars. So last time I mentioned that my next project will be the Lieutenant General Grant. So I got out the book and started looking in there. And at the time that was first being developed, I bought all of Jerry's 3D printed stuffways. I bought the stuff that Al was selling, and I figured, oh, I'm in good shape. Well, I got on and looked at, there were just a couple pages more worth of things that I was going to have to find. And then I looked at the paint bill of materials, and whoa, everything he's recommended is Model Master, which I've never used and don't have any of. Plus, it's being discontinued. So I spent a couple days scrambling around internet and eBay trying to find some of these colors, and some of them I got, some of them I didn't, and some of them I will have to kind of approximate something.
Hey, John. John Fugit with the Model Railroader Hobbyists, the online magazine. They produced, I don't know whether it's a booklet or a pamphlet. When Model Master went out of business, they went to work to create a cross-reference for every form of model or paint that's out there. Let me see if I can find a link to it and I'll share it with everybody. But it's a great guide to being able to actually look at the Model Master number. I know what you're talking about because I've got all of Al's books and stuff, and you look at it and go, he's using Model Master, that kind of stuff. And it's like, how do I find something that matches? So I just make that recommendation, and I'll get a link to that from Model Railroad or Hobbyists online, and they've got that. It's a free booklet that did all that cross-referencing when they went out of business.
Well, I have seen that, but in the context of Floquil, when Floquil was discontinued a few years ago, and I've never really studied it enough to see if Model Master is there.
Yes, it is.
And
And
I'll have to look at it again then.
BTS has a, if you go to his website, he's got a
Yes.
conversion for the Model Master paints.
Yeah.
Not Model Master, the Floquil paints, the Floquil
Right.
colors.
Right.
it goes from Floquil to Model Master and all the other companies too. If you put in a paint, it'll say what color, it'll say what it is in originally Floquil, going into possibly Model Masters or Polyscale, or whether it's acrylic paint or lacquer or enamel. That is off of I just was there just the other day. Oh, man, I think we're talking about the same one, the BTS. I think that's what we're talking about here. As a matter, and now, as far as I should probably bring it up. The next meeting, I will show you a presentation of the grant. I did the grant, and I actually did some extra detailing of the undercarriage on the grant too. And the grant, I looked at that, and I've been looking at, first of all, every one of these engines was somebody's girl, okay? They were all, every engineer of all of these engines in this period, they were given those engines for life. And all you have to go down to Texas, go down to South Carolina. You guys all model Southern stuff. Look at the truckers. Look what they do to their trucks. Look what they do to their Peterbilts and their Whites, and they're gussied up to the max. And so I was talking to John, and actually with Tom, who started with this, that everybody painted that grant a mud red. Wrong. It's wrong. That was a beautiful wine red. It was shiny and a real beautiful color to it. And unfortunately, and then I talked to John Ott, and he agreed with me. And so I ended up using I don't know, I can tell you it's a Model Master color. I'd have to go find it. I will for the next meeting. But it's got real red sherry color to it, but it's dark. So it's like a beautiful maroon. It's not that mud red. So let me stop you on that right away. The grant was not that color. Okay.
Good. We'll have to put you in
Okay.
and you can show us what you got.
I will.
When I was talking earlier, I mentioned that I had been messing around with doing a 3D design on a locomotive.
Oh, it's your cab. Oval windows. Nice. Oh my God, look at that.
Yeah,
That's what's on the grant.
that's exactly what that is.
Can you hold them back a little? Paul, yeah, that's better.
Hey, stop it, DC.
Homes aren't on that right at the moment, but yeah, that's the grant cab. And
Tender.
There you go.
Wow.
there's my tender.
You've been busy, boy.
Yeah, like I said, I haven't figured out how to make this thing run yet. But, I've got domes and everything separate.
Nice. Nice, Paul.
Are you planning on
I haven't got down to the frame. What?
Are you planning on making this run?
If I figure out how to,
Well, mine runs.
I have to figure out how to build a chassis and how to make the motor fit inside this thing, because there's not a whole lot of room in this.
Well, we started with a Mantua General chassis.
Right.
This
right.
is O scale, so there's a
Oh.
little more room.
Whoops.
Actually,
I didn't know you could live in the boiler.
Yeah. So, but you can see I got the windows done, and
Yeah.
we have all the decoration of the cab yet, but I
Well
haven't figured
done,
out how
Paul.
I'm going to do the frame. I haven't figured out how I'm going to do the propulsion yet.
Right.
I haven't figured out how I'm going to do several. Oh, here.
Oh, nice. Nice stack.
That is
Very good.
designed. That is designed to hold a 1-inch round speaker.
Cool.
Yeah.
Great.
So the 1-inch round speaker will fit down inside that.
Yeah.
Nice.
So if I ever get it all done, and goodness knows whether I will or not, it'll be battery powered with sound and everything. So we'll see
Nice
what
work.
happens.
Good. Keep us updated. Thank you. John Bob, was there anything else you wanted to share? Because we kind of got sidetracked from you for a second. Is there anything else?
No, I have no tangible progress, just ideas moving forward.
Well, great. Good. So, Mr. Ott, I'd like to turn it over to you.
Oh,
And
definitely.
this will
He's
be
here.
on the Mason locomotive. So, John, take it away.
Okay. First of all, let's check, make sure everybody can hear me all right. Am I too soft or too loud or too garbled?
Good.
Sounds good. Everybody should put their speakers on mute.
Yeah, well, let's, I'm going to be clicking around a little bit, trying to share a screen. And after I get the screen share going, I want everybody to, or not, I just want some confirmation that I didn't turn everybody off.
One question, John.
Sure thing.
Would you prefer that people wait for you to complete, or you want to be open to questions as we move through this?
Oh, interrupt me anytime.
Okay.
I'm going to be doing this extemporaneously. I'm going to be talking off my top of my head. So yeah, there isn't a script to this.
Gotcha.
I'm just going to try and tell a story and pass along a little information. So here we go with share screen. And let's find it here. Then let's go and start the show. Everybody see the first screen here?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, great. Wonderful. I didn't turn anybody off. All right, this is the tale of how Daniel McCallum lost his first Mason engine and what he did about it. I'm going to talk a little bit about Masons, and I'm going to talk about Civil War stuff that most of you guys are going to be familiar with, so I'm going to gloss over a lot of things. If I gloss over too much, interrupt me. But, you know, to start with, way back in 1853, long ago in a distant land, about 45 minutes from where I used to live when I joined this group, William Mason had a very successful and very big factory for the manufacture of cotton spinning machinery. And old Mason had never built a locomotive in his life, but all of a sudden his next door neighbors turned out to be the Taunton Locomotive Works, which was New England's first factory dedicated to nothing but building locomotives. And Mason had a lot of down business cycles were really violent. You'd have years where the order books would be filled, and you'd have years where there was just nothing coming in. And he wanted a second line to keep his skilled workmen busy. So he got the idea from Taunton, maybe I should build some locomotives. And Mason was a extremely artistic, extremely inventive,
And the guy just had a lot of good thoughts about how to design and make things. Hell, he built the first mansion in Massachusetts that actually had indoor plumbing. So that kind of tells you how sophisticated the guy was.
Wow.
He got the right people. He hired people from the other existing locomotive works in New England, got some good people, started to design locomotives. And what he came up with, there's his first locomotive, there's a picture of his factory.
Beautiful.
But what he came up with was something that looks so familiar to us today that we think, well, what's there special about this? But you got to realize that locomotives back in that time had some really wonky characteristics compared to what we're used to. And Mason was the first guy to really put it all together. He built locomotives with straight boilers. He had only a single steam dome over his firebox, not like most New England engines. He didn't have a front dome. He didn't have two domes like Baldwin or Rogers or a lot of the other builders. When he put on a sandbox, he didn't make it a square box, which is where the thing got its name, but he made it another dome so that it kind of worked aesthetically with the steam dome. He didn't have any steam cannons for safety valves. He didn't have separate steam cannons for whistles. He had a clean boiler top. He put everything over in the single steam dome. When he got to the cylinders, he didn't bolt his cylinders at a slant on his smoke box like everybody else did. He went and borrowed an idea from Walter McQueen over in Schenectady and actually made a cylinder saddle. That little Y-shaped thing that you see on locomotives that holds the smoke box. And he bolted the cylinders to the cylinder saddle. Very, very simple idea now, but very revolutionary back then. And he also lowered the cylinders so they weren't at a slant. They ran off the center line of the drivers. And underneath, he spread the pilot wheels. Up to this point, the pilot wheels had been close together in most locomotives and a little bit forward, and none of it really bothered to line up or anything. Mason and his guys really took kind of a aesthetic approach to building locomotives. Everything lined up with everything else. The smoke box lined up with the beginning of the driving wheel. The steam dome was on the center line between the drivers. Everything was horizontal lines. Everything was really, compared to everything else done at that time, really beautiful. He used Stevenson links, which were uncommon then. He used one-piece bar frames, which again were revolutionary at the time. His stuff was pretty much superior to just about any other locomotive built as far as design went. And you could buy them in either green or blue. Mason was also a painter and an artist. When he was a young man and he ran out of work at the spinning mills, he'd go out and paint portraits for people. So the guy knew what he was doing. The guy really had a sense of color and design, and he just wouldn't splash on colors like a lot of the other, oh my God, look at some of the Baldwin stuff from that time. Yeah, it was all perfectly to taste, but Mason had what we would consider an advanced taste for his time. His locomotives were pretty simple and pretty revolutionary. One of them that's kind of related to Civil War is the old Baltimore and Ohio 25, which is still with us today. But there you can see in its original configuration all the original Mason elements that the thing had. The paint on the domes, the striping on the tender. And yeah, kind of the ghost of the engine is still with us. Every part on it has been replaced 2 or 3 times, but it still kind of looks like a Mason. It's got that sleek, really fast-looking design that the railroads back then just really loved. And before too many years were out. This was in 1858. Here's an engine from 1858, just 5 years after Masons started building. They were putting Masons in front of passenger trains, and nothing looked as fast and as sleek and as fancy as a Mason locomotive. They were a prestige item. So, of course, when the war started, every locomotive or every railroad official that had anything to do with government railroads and so forth had to have his own locomotive named after him. And that included Daniel McCallum. Dan McCallum was hired about a year into the war when people like George McClellan and Edwin Stanton really got serious about logistics. They realized they weren't going to march into Richmond in 2 weeks. They realized they had to keep big armies in the field in Northern Virginia, and they had to be supplied. And of course, the main routes of supply were railroads, specifically the Orange and Alexandria and other railroads in the area. And so they hired Daniel McCallum to run the railroads for them. And McCallum had been the former superintendent of the Erie Railroad. And he is far more important to modern business practices than anybody realizes. If you go to a business and you pick up an org chart, you know, you see the little lines and little boxes, here reports to here, this guy reports to that guy. Daniel McCallum was the first recorded official to come up with an org chart. He started making org charts for the Erie Railroad. He did a lot of other things. He introduced the use of telegraph for train orders. He did a lot of progressive things that got absorbed by corporate business in the United States and are carried down to this very day. I mean, you know, imagine a business without an org chart. But, you know, they had to start somewhere, and they started with Dan McCallum. He was running his own bridge building company when Edwin Stanton came, and they tried a few other people before that. They tried Tom Scott, the president of Pennsylvania. They tried to organize things around a couple other people. But Edwin Stanton got a hold of Dan McCallum, brought him to Washington, gave him the rank of colonel, and he just spent the entire war in Washington, D.C. being efficient. And, you know, the Union armies were very seldom short of rail-borne supplies, thanks to him. He kept the trains moving. And during the war, he ran the largest railroad operation in the United States. Here he is at the foot of Long Bridge. The old Long Bridge, which you see over to the right, just had tracks laid on it when the war began. But McCallum organized the effort behind building a new specific railroad bridge across the Potomac. Here he is sitting at it, looking. There they are. You can see Alexandria in the background. And McCallum got a hold of the Orange and Alexandria, and of course took it over from its current owners and revamped the shops, pushed the lines deep into Virginia, as deep as the troops were. And he had to rebuild the Orange and Alexandria, I don't know how many times. Whenever the Union forces moved out of the areas, the Confederates would move in, and of course, there would go the railroad. So the railroad pulled back to the lines around Alexandria a couple times during the war, maybe 3 or 4 times. Go ahead.
John, one question. When I look at that upper photo of the shops at Alexandria, is that a 3-way stub switch in the foreground toward the bottom?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Curious. Thank you.
Yep. Yeah. The three ways weren't all that rare. I think you can see another one.
Going the other way.
Up from that.
Oh, right.
They were a handy thing. They were a real handy thing. But yeah, you can see the view across Alexandria and across the river toward Washington, D.C. in this shot.
John, can I say something?
Go right ahead.
Notice next to that three-way switch is a guardrail on that track. Can you see it?
Yeah, I think I see it.
Yeah. And the other pictures, the guardrail's on the wrong side of the rail, and I can't ever figure out what happened, but this picture shows it. By the way, Washington is not in the background. That is more toward Maryland. Washington would be to the left.
Right.
Yep. Well, you would know, Bernie.
And, and may I interject also?
Go ahead.
Okay. This is one of the shots I was talking about with the wrecking train, where you see all of the cars lined up with the windows and the various tops. That's the kitchen car and a lot of the other cars that I was talking about a minute ago. Thank you for letting me slip in.
Oh, that's fine. That's fine. No, these are all photos I pulled out of the Library of Congress long ago. But you know, it's just this was McCallum's operation. Herman Hott, who you guys probably all know, he was more or less the construction guy. He kept the lines open and running. But he was McCallum's second in command, even though he got to be general before McCallum did. Anyway, McCallum also started buying locomotives. And during the period of the war, he bought almost 300 locomotives. He had the biggest, most modern fleet of locomotives in the nation. And he bought so many locomotives and he filled up the order books with so many locomotive manufacturers that he drove up the cost of locomotives to twice what they were when he came into office. Mm-hmm. You can see back here, back in 1862, when McCallum arrived in Washington, you could buy a locomotive for under $10,000. By the middle of 1864, you had to spend over $20,000 for a decent locomotive. That was the result of the government buying so many locomotives and going from manufacturer to manufacturer and saying, how many locomotives can you build for me? And they would fit them in among the other orders that they had at the time. And William Mason ended up building 31 engines for the government during the war. Just like the General Hott, which has got to be the most photographed locomotive in the war, thanks to Andrew Russell, who was a close personal friend of General Hott. But you can see that they were good-looking locomotives. They were really sleek, really fancy. They didn't deserve to pull construction trains, which is what they mostly did. Here's a color version of the Hott that I drew. This was several years ago when I was first getting into drawing these things. But you can see what, you know, beautiful colors, beautiful lines. I think they're just outstanding locomotives. So, of course, everybody who is anybody in the railroad business in Washington, D.C. had to have an engine named after him, including a few generals, General Burnside, General Sickles. Hott, of course, had to have his locomotive, Robinson, Wenz, Whitten. They went and they raided the local Confederate railroads, took all their locomotives. One of them they renamed the Clark, formerly the General Beauregard, which they captured on the Virginia Central about the same time Herman Hott, or about the same time Daniel McCallum came on board. Come on, mouse. Here we go. But the first engine that Daniel McCallum ordered from Mason, of course, he named after himself. The DC McCallum was the first Mason engine that was delivered. It was built by Mason in May of 1862. And draw this engine, I had a bit of a problem because it didn't have the same specs as the General Hopt or her sisters. And that, because it was so well photographed, we pretty much knew, we could figure out the dimensions of that locomotive. Couldn't figure out the dimensions of the DC McCallum because there's no photographs of the DC McCallum. So I went through the Mason order book and looked for other locomotives that shared the same specifications from about the same time. And lo and behold, I found one, the Central Pacific Atlantic, which was built about a year later, but had the exact same cylinder dimensions and driving wheel diameters and everything else like that. I figured that because locomotives back then were sized according to the cylinder dimensions, how much steam they could produce, dictated the size of the boilers. I figured that the DC McCallum had to have more or less the same dimensions. I don't think anybody can really tell, but the locomotives like the Hopt were just a tad bit bigger, a little bit longer boiler, a little bit higher off the ground. So anyway, I assume that old McCallum was happy. He had a fancy Mason locomotive named after him, which was something that all successful executives had to have at that time. Didn't last very long though. The DC McCallum came on board in the middle of 1862, and just a few months later, so did somebody else. And I don't think with this group I have to retell the story of General John Pope and the Union Army of Virginia, and what happened to him and the Army at the Second Battle of Manassas. Basically, this is the most cogent quote on General John Pope I can find.
Yes.
It can be truth be said of him that he had not a friend in his command, from the smallest drummer boy to the highest general officer. All hated him. One of his fellow generals is the guy that was responsible for that quote. The guy was to make things real short, he was a braggart, and he really didn't have any experience in maneuver warfare. And he just got maneuvered all over the place in the 4 or 5 short weeks that he had in command. One thing I will point out, though, very interesting, is that his major path of movement was right along the Orange and Alexandria Railway. This was typical for the war. You stick close to the tracks and close to the supply lines and close to those trains that Daniel McCallum was sending you every day. I once did an average and figured out that there were at least 9 trains a day over the entire course of the war going down the tracks in Northern Virginia.
Wow.
Now, because the tracks were abandoned so much of the period of time, that meant that the trains were just double and triple and God knows how many trains a day were being sent full of supplies for the Army. But anyway, after getting outmaneuvered and on the 30th of August, he realized the folly of not watching his flank and having Longstreet sneak up with 25,000 men. The Union Army just kind of beat a rather brisk path back to the lines in Alexandria. And when they did that, they left behind on the Orange and Alexandria 7 locomotives and 295 cars. One of those 7 locomotives was Daniel McCallum's locomotive. They wrecked what they couldn't take back with them, but they took Daniel McCallum's locomotive back south with them. And the record old Hodichel's book says that it was put to work on the Virginia Central and given the name Pocahontas. And I really kind of question that. That's something that's going to have to be looked at further because according to the rosters, the Virginia Central already had a Mason locomotive named Pocahontas. So either they're getting the two switched there or one replaced the other, or I don't know what happened. But at any rate, Daniel McCallum lost his locomotive.
Wow.
And, you know, there were a lot of people unhappy with John Pope. And he ended up very shortly thereafter being assigned to Minnesota to chase Indians. So I think he pretty much conclude that not very much was thought of his performance.
Oh.
Wow.
But anyway, McCallum was without a locomotive named after him. And to show you just how important everything was, his underlings very quickly went out, found a New Jersey locomotive, not this one, but one very similar to it, and quickly painted out the name and renamed it the Colonel McCallum. But it wasn't a Mason. It was just one of your run-of-the-mill locomotives from another manufacturer. And apparently this was kind of a big deal. So another year went by, and I guess Daniel McCallum just kind of bided his time, worked in Washington, sent out the trains, did all sorts of amazing things. He got the two corps of the Union Army from the Eastern Theater to the Western Theater right in time for the Battle of Chattanooga, relieving Thomas and Grant and Sherman there. That was an epic tale of railroad movement, but McCallum organized it with help from a lot of other people, I should add. But you know, it's one of those things that just shows to go how efficient the railroad organization was with the U.S. Army at that time. But anyway, it came time to go get another batch of locomotives from Mason. And this time, Daniel McCallum decided, well, you know, I'm going to do it upright. And in 1864, he commissioned another Mason. And the only picture we have of it is the tender. However, Mason was building other locomotives at that time with the same specs. And there again, I went and consulted other locomotives and other specs. And this is pretty much how the thing looked. Now, hey, Bernie, this is my favorite locomotive on your layout. I just love your model. But, you know, it's just slightly a little bit different from how they built the Hopt and the locomotives earlier in the war. I'm going to just kind of wait just here a minute because I think Bernie's off to get something. But in the meantime, we can.
I had a question, John. I noticed on the one locomotive, I was looking at the lamp boxes for the lamps, and I saw one was an oval, and it was the prototype photo. Were those common or were those uncommon? Because it usually have these like rectangular boxes, but I saw that one was an oval.
I'll answer that in a minute, but I want everybody to look at Bernie's locomotive.
Oh yeah, cool.
That is the greatest model.
Drop your share screen for a second so we can take a good look.
I don't see it.
Yeah, hang on just a minute. Let me stop share so Bernie can.
If you choose speaker view, Bernie, if you speak, your image will come up in the full screen.
This is a model that SMR sold, and I bought it.
Can you hold it further away from the screen?
Yeah, there we go.
It does not have battery power and it does not have a keep alive, but I did add all-wheel pickup on it. So I don't normally run this one until I can put the keep alive in it. Plus it's 1864, technically it shouldn't be on my railroad.
What's a keep alive?
My railroad uses DCC or battery powered NDCC. The keep alive is a capacitor on board the engine that allows it to coast over dirty track.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, this is a nice engine. There's a driver in there, if you can see him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a cool engine. It's got my red flags, which
Uh-huh.
means an extra is, let's see, not following, right? How does that work? No, an extra is following.
It's following, right.
It's backwards from nowadays.
Right.
But anyway, yeah, go ahead, John. I don't have that print in my house. I have the what'd you give me? We have the Washington and the Devereaux, right?
Right, right.
Yeah, they're up on my stairwell. When you come down, the first thing on your left is John Ott's prints.
Cool. Let me go back and finish up the tail. Let's see here if I've got the right. Yeah, here we go. Here we are back. And I wanted to just highlight that painting on the tender, which was just amazing. This has got to be the most elaborate tender painting of any Civil War engine that I've seen.
That's beautiful work, John.
Yeah, it's just, you can tell that, you know, if McCallum wasn't proud of this, he wasn't proud of anything. He was at the top of the pyramid with this engine painted the way it was.
It reminds me now of Monty Python.
What about Monty Python?
Just seeing this now, I see a Monty Python cartoon where the big foot's gonna come out.
Oh, right.
That's right. That's good, Bern. Yep.
Yeah. There you go. You got the globe grasping eagles, and you got cannons and shields and flags and scroll work and my God, it's amazing production.
Right.
And the Mason factory came out of that. Now this engine was not built for the East. It was built a 5-foot gauge. And it was intended to run on the Louisville and Nashville and the lines running south from Nashville to Chattanooga.
They have to send it to Charlie.
It's, spent its entire working life out in the West. And after the war, it was sold to the Nashville and Chattanooga, who, for understandable reasons, painted out McCallum's portrait and repainted the thing and named it the V.K. Stevenson, which was the executive that first ran the Nashville and Chattanooga. And it lasted until about the 1880s. But anyway, McCallum got his locomotive back. He got his Mason back. And the last thing I want to show you is I got inspired by running Bernie's O-scale. So I had to come back home and grab some Bachmann parts and do my own HO scale version of it.
Wow.
This little beast doesn't run very well. I've got to do some more work on it. I've got to redo the tender trucks and help the weight in the tender and help the pickups so the thing will actually conduct electricity and run without skipping all over the place.
Right. Folks, put yourselves on mute. There's some leakage of some sounds coming in. Thank you.
At any rate, I'm just going to wrap things up. I'm going to end the show. And just one more little detail there. There's the little beast.
Ah, yes.
See if I can maneuver it a little bit closer.
Yep. Nice.
It is only a Bachmann engine.
Well,
Someday I'd
it was a
love to
Bachmann.
have a, yeah, right. Someday I would love to have a engine of the quality that SMR built for Bernie. That was just a very impressive model. Anyway, that's the story about how Daniel McCallum lost his Mason.
We'll have to
Got
switch.
another Mason in return.
Great job, John.
Thank you.
Charlie, you have one, right? Charlie, don't you have a McCallum?
Now, I have two,
Oh,
McCall.
see? Go on.
No.
What a bragger.
I miss SMR. I cannot believe they're gone.
Oh, yeah.
I get it. Hey,
Now I
guys.
have Paul Dodd with us locomotives.
I'm gonna have to jump because I have a business call I actually got to take right now. So you guys stay on, and I'm gonna do this some other way. So if you want to keep the show going, you just continue to have your conversation. This will go as long as you want. Okay.
I'm gonna have to go too. But,
Okay.
Thank you, Tom. It's great, and thank you, John. That's a great presentation.
Yes, very great.
Thanks, Tom.
You're
Thank you,
welcome.
Tom.
You're welcome.
Thanks, John.
I'll be in touch
Thanks,
with you
Tom.
guys for the next show.
You did record it.
Thank you, Tom. Great presentation. John.
Hey, Brian, where are you?
There you down.
Yeah.
I can't see him.
He's gone.
Right here.
Yeah, there you are.
All right.
You're looking good, Brett.
I just wanted to, so it's 2 weeks.
How are you?
Just a real quick question. So 2 weeks from now, still good for people?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
I'll get an email out to you all. All right, folks. Good night.
Hey, Tom.
Thank
Hey, Tom.
Yeah, it was
Thank you,
great.
Tom.
Thank you. Good seeing you all.
Question.
Where's the painting in the background?
That's a very old, unavailable print from Wilbur Kurtz, who did it for some magazine or something. And my buddy Ken Pruitt, who I bought all the stuff from back in like 2000, that was one of the things that he sent me. And I just got to find a frame for it.
Cool.
Yeah, it is. Chip, you had a question?
Cool.
I'm good.
Nope. Okay.
I thought you had hired another artist for your background.
No way. You the man. So are you guys okay if I end the meeting?
Yeah, you can end it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm okay.
Good to see
Hey,
you all.
John,
We don't care,
John?
sleepy boy.
is John not still there?
I'm still here.
John, what do you use to do your prints?
What do I
What?
Adobe Illustrator and Adobe Photoshop.
Okay. Yeah, that stuff looks great.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, all
Nice
your stuff.
presentation.
Sorry.
I'm going to sign off, guys. So it's nice seeing everybody again. See you in a couple of weeks.
All right.
Nice
Take
meeting
care,
you.
Ronnie.
See you in a couple weeks. See you, everybody. Have a good night.
Bye, Ron.
Thanks. Yep.
Yep. Good night,
Everybody.
everybody. See y'all 2 weeks.
Cool.
You got it.